On Wednesday, we finished up the 3 approaches to value. We were right at the end of it. We ran out of time. I gave you that big income capitalization approach math problem, and then we kind of ran out of time there. So I just need to put a bow on chapter 17. Before I talk about this last little piece, does anybody have specific questions from chapter 17? It's a big chapter. I mean, there's a lot of material. Anytime I lecture for 4 hours on one chapter, it's a big one. So, does anybody have any specific questions? We got 3 main property types, right? Residential. What approach to value we're going to use to value residential property? Sales comparison approach, and that also works for what other kind of property? Vacant land. Residential and vacant land are valued using the sales comparison approach, and that's the one that's based on that principle of substitution, right? Where 2 things that are pretty equal, people are going to buy the cheapest one, and so therefore we find recently sold things that are very similar. We make direct comparisons. We make adjustments. That's the one where you come up with a range of value, right? Then we talked about the cost approach to valuing property. What kinds of properties do we use the cost approach for? Special use properties, okay? Remember, the cost approach is a math equation, right? Or at least a math idea. What do you start with in the cost approach? Value the land as if it's what? As if it's vacant. And so how do we value vacant land? Using the sales comparison approach. So we would separately take the land using the sales comparison approach and come up with a value for the vacant land. That's step 1, right? What's step 2? Come up with either a replacement or reproduction cost. Most often replacement. Which one's more expensive, replacement or reproduction? Reproduction. Most often replacement, and the most common type of replacement cost is what method? Square foot method, where we just have a number of square feet and we have $1 per square foot, right?
So if there was I don't even know where I got it from, whatever, but it was like a mansion that had been like a 1800 mansion that was had been restructured into apartments. What was the you replacement for reproduction? It was something like that where it made you think about the fact that it was a mansion. Is the rule just always what its use is right then? Is that how you figure that out?
It's current use,
It's
right?
current use, so
Right.
it wouldn't matter that it was, if it had just been a home, from the 1800s, then
Then it
it's
would be reproduction.
But because they're using it as
That's an
something
income,
else.
right?
Okay.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
Then it's going to be replacement. So step 1, value the land. Step 2, come up with a replacement cost. Most often using $1 per square foot, right? And what's step 3?
Depreciation.
Subtract the depreciation. Now, are you going to depreciate the total value so far, or are you going to depreciate just what?
Just the replacement.
Just the replacement, just the building.
Mm-hmm.
Just depreciate the improvements, not the land. Land doesn't. So you don't want to add step 1 and step 2 together yet, right? You want to have step 1 plus step 2 minus some percentage of step 2. Does everybody got that? Step 1 land plus step 2 replacement cost minus some percentage of that replacement cost. Not a percentage of the 2 added together, just of the replacement cost itself. And the most common way we do that depreciation is that straight line age life method, where they give you an economic life and an effective age. And just remember, you can just take the effective age divided by economic life. You put the effective age on the top. If it's 7 years into a 50-year economic life, that's just 7 divided by 50. And remember, we're calculating a rate, so we always do what? Multiply that by 100, and that gives you your depreciation. So if it's 7 years into a 50-year economic life, that's going to be 7 divided by 50 times 100, and that percentage, that's how much you've depreciated.
And that's what you're going to multiply by your
And that's what you're going to multiply by your replacement cost.
multiply.
Multiply that
So you get
percentage.
total, right.
Once you get that percentage, the depreciation amount, you multiply that percentage times your replacement cost, and that's the amount you're gonna be subtracting out. That's your depreciation. Everybody follow that? So, just to give you,
Travis, could you have just, say the depreciation is 20%, so
Yep.
could you take that replacement cost and times it by 80%?
you could, as long as you remember then there's no subtraction step at that
Right.
point, So you could, so what she's asking is, can I do step one, land value, step two, plus depreciated
Replacement cost.
replacement cost.
So you can combine 2 and 3
You
counts.
can combine 2 and 3 if you want to. Or you can go step one, land, step two, plus replacement cost, step three, minus depreciation. Alright, so let's just throw some numbers at one. Okay, I'll show you how it works the same both ways, no matter which way you go. Let's say our land value, and we'll put it here in the middle. Actually, we should put it over here. Our land value is $50,000. Okay? And we have a 2,000 square foot building that's valued at $100 a square foot. $200,000, right? Wouldn't that be our replacement cost? So, now, on this side, we're at 50,000 plus 200,000. If we're doing it that way. If we're doing it this way, we're not adding 200,000 over here yet, because we gotta come up with the depreciated amount. So we have to keep that 200,000 off to the side. Does everybody see the difference? Okay. And that, let's say that property is, we'll go with the 750. 7 years into its 50-year economic life
So 7 years
is the effective age,
extra age.
and that's the economic life, right? 7 over 50. Do that in your calculator.
And the economic age is the one that doesn't change.
Economic life doesn't
Economic life.
change. Right.
Doesn't change.
Okay? What do you come up with?
14%.
14%. 0.14, you're gonna multiply times 100, right? Because you're calculating the percentage. 14% depreciation. Is everybody with me on that?
You could just think of it as age and life anyway without the 2 E words in front of it. 'Cause
Yeah.
Age, life's not gonna change.
Age and life, right. There you go. So we're at 14% depreciation. So on this side, in our traditional model, we're gonna take 14% of 200,000, which is what, 28,000?
Yeah.
Minus 28,000. I just figured 14% of 100,000 is 14 and times 2. It's because I like to earn 14% commission. So sorry. My training fantasy. And so over here, it would be land value plus replacement minus depreciation. Over here, if we're doing a depreciated replacement value, if it's 14% depreciation, what amount's left? 86%. So over here, it would be plus 86% of $200,000. That's how you would combine them at that one step if you want to. Go ahead.
Do 28 again, 128, I forgot. Come on.
Alright, so we were 7 years into our 50-year lifespan. 14% depreciation. We just depreciate the replacement value. So 200,000 times 14%
Okay.
is $28,000, and that's what we're subtracting out. Make sense? Okay. On this side, you gotta do the opposite of what's depreciated if you wanna do it this way. You don't use 14%, you use the flip side, which is 80% remaining,
Which is 172.
which would be 172. So here we would have 50,000 plus 172,000. So $222,000. Over here, it's 50,000 plus 200 is 250, minus 28, $222,000. Gonna give you the same number, no matter which way you wanna do it.
So basically, step 2 and 3 on the right.
Have just
You
been
step
combined
number
into
two.
one step over here, exactly.
So just thinking percentages and stuff, the only time that you really can't flip them like that is when you're trying to find a sales price with the total that the seller wants to get from, the bucket, and
Okay,
you have the commission. That's the only time, you can't, remember, like, say the commission is 6%, you can't do anything except, it'll just get screwed up unless you do divided by 94%.
right,
Other than that, you can flip them like
you
this.
can flip them, yeah.
Right.
Yep. It's the beauty of percentages.
What?
You look, that's the beauty of percentages,
Yeah.
you can look at it from either side,
Right.
whichever way your brain works.
Right.
Uh,
But that one time screws it up if you don't,
Yeah.
if you don't do it.
I mean, cause all that side is doing is combining step 2 and 3 is in one step. If you're quick enough on your feet to go, okay, well, I got 14% depreciation, that means I just need to multiply my 200,000 times 86%, go for it. If you're not, you can do it this way. You can come up with the same answer either way. That's a cost valuation, the least accurate. We do it on special use properties, primarily for insurance purposes. And then the last one, the one that we left off with on Wednesday, is the income capitalization approach. And remember, the income capitalization approach is just a big old T-bar, right? IRV. What's the I stand for in IRV? What kind of income? NOI, net operating income. So if you had to give me a definition, and this is another thing they like to do on the state exam, put a math formula into words. Now, which of the following represents the best possible definition of net operating income? So you tell me, as I say, use your words. Use your words and tell me what net operating income is. If I want to volunteer a guess, go for it.
Is it effective, gross income minus expenses?
That's exactly what it would be. Minus what kind of expenses?
Not debt service.
Operating expenses. Operating expenses, exactly right. All expenses that not mortgage payments, not debt service, exactly right. So effective gross, or you can even go back one step further. It's gross potential income minus vacancy and losses minus operating expenses, right? It's just putting that formula that you know in labels into a sentence. So they'll give you some questions like that sometimes.
And what's the next step? You do the cash flow?
The cash flow, you subtract out the mortgage payment, the debt
And
service.
that's right.
Principal and interest. Now remember, if you give you a PITI payment, the TI part is operating expense, taxes and insurance, right? If they say, the principal and interest payment is blah, 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 you don't wanna just ignore all of that, because part of that, the taxes and insurance, those are operating expenses. It's just the principal and interest part that are not. Everybody understand that? You can throw that wrinkle in there.
Question that you might have covered it before I get here, earlier. When we were doing those PITI problems, I guess, we do it through YouTube or something, what was the time that you were conferring, I don't remember.
Oh, that's buyer qualification.
We were doing the PITI problems, or I was doing it, and then in every problem, the answer would be, because we were doing 28% and 36%.
Right.
And the answer will always be 36%.
They may throw you one where it's not.
And I'm thinking, why are we doing 28% if it's always?
So you're exactly right. Most of the time, the 36% side, does everybody know what he's asking about? He's talking about buyer affordability, and you have to do the 28% and the 36% side. Most of the time, it's going to be the 36% side. And so here's the way to think about it. Most of the time, most of us have more debt than 6% of our income, because the difference between 28 and 36 is just, 8%, right? The difference between 28 and 36 is 8%. So for you to be the only way the 28% side could be the limiting side is if you basically have no debt
No.
other than your house payment. But you gotta check it all the time, especially when you get to a real big income, because sometimes you get to a real big income and they'll give you like a $200 credit card payment, but that's not enough it's still gonna be the 28% side that kicks it out. So you do have to do it, but it is a good observation. Most of the time, your answer comes from the 36% side. When in doubt, go to the 36%.
Your credit card income's gonna go into your 36%.
Yeah, credit card debt, student loan payments, car payments are the most common ones they give you. Be careful of things like dues and utility bills, because that's not debt. Those are services you pay for.
And the 28% is, or, yeah, it's just, yeah,
28% is paid.
It is
Housing
paid.
expense, PITI plus HOA.
I need to.
You think of those two buckets. I'm gonna show my terrible drawings on a basket here, not a basket over here.
That's it, with the drawings on YouTube, yeah.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
tax and insurance was for the NOI. So operating expenses,
If
the.
this is my 28% basket, my principal payment, my interest payment,
God, I wish.
my taxes,
Yeah,
and my insurance.
anyway.
And if I have HOA dues, those go in there too. That means when I figure up my income and 28% of my income, it's gotta be enough to pay all of these expenses. If I run out of money in the basket before I run out of expenses to pay, I don't qualify for the loan. Does that make sense? So the 28% basket, PITI plus HOA. That's called the housing expense. Now, I'm gonna change this to the 36% basket. What of that do you see me taking out? Nothing.
Right.
Because housing expense is part of the 36% basket as well, right? Housing expense plus credit card bills. Credit cards don't want to be in there. Credit card bills and car payments, student loan payments. And so now I start the process over again. I start paying those bills out one at a time. I pay this bill, I pay that bill, I pay this bill, and I get to the end, and I'm out of money in the basket, but I still got a bill to pay. Do I qualify for the loan? No. If I paid all the bills, and there's still a little bit of money left in the basket, do I qualify for the loan? Which basket do I have to qualify under? Both of them. We gotta check both. Gotta make sure there's enough money in the basket to cover both of them. Everybody follow that? So that's a good question, and those are ones that traditionally people get confused with, the buyer qualification stuff. So go back and watch that video with you.
So now the questions that ask, can you do it, and one works and one doesn't, the question might just be asking that, but in reality, they wouldn't qualify, because
That's right. If they don't qualify under both, they don't qualify. Now,
some of the questions that we did and didn't, but that was the one they wanted to check, that was the question.
right.
It didn't ask us, do they qualify?
Do they qualify? We say, do they qualify under the 28% ratio? If they ask you specifically, you just answer yes, you just do the 28% side. Now, if they ask you something like, how much can Jen afford for other monthly debt obligations? Which basket deals with other monthly debt obligations? 36%. There's no need to look at the 28% side, because other monthly debt is not in that basket. Does everybody, you kind of get that? You'd only be working with the 36% side if they ask you like how much they could afford for other debt. So the way you would do that problem is figure out how much money's in the basket, which is going to be their monthly income times 36%. Then take out their housing expense, subtract out their housing expense. That leaves the money they have to spend on monthly debt left in the basket. And whatever's left after you take out the housing expense, that's how much they can afford on other debt. Same is true if they ask you how much can they afford for the house payment. Well, figure out how much money's in the basket. 36% times their income in the basket. This time I'm taking out what? The debt. I want to know how much I can afford for the housing expenses. This time I'm removing the debt from the basket first. Whatever money's left in the basket, that's what they can afford on their house payment. But when they ask about house payment, I got to check the other side as well, right? I got to look at the 28% of their income, put that in the basket. How much money's left in there? Well, I didn't take anything out, so it's how much is in there, period. Now I'm comparing the two baskets. Which one's got less money in it? Because that's going to be the one that's going to determine my answer. Does the 28% basket have less in it, or does the 36% have less in it after I've taken the debt out of it. The one that has less, that's how much they can afford for a house payment. And that's what I mean by put yourself in the shoes of the lender. If you're qualifying for somebody for a loan, which payment are you gonna be happier with them having? A low payment or a high payment? Low. I'm gonna feel much more comfortable they can repay if they're making a lower payment, right? So whichever basket gives me the lower payment, that's the number they qualify for. Everybody okay on that? Alright, so back to this income capitalization approach. Remember ERV, net operating income on top, and then on the bottom, we have the capitalization rate on the right side, and the value over on the left side, right? Net operating income over capitalization rate and value. Aren't those the three things in the T-bar for income capitalization approach? Tell me in words what the capitalization rate is.
Profit for how much profit that the buyer wants to make.
Sort of. How much
To invest to get back.
how much I get back on my investment. Profit's getting there, but see, profit's a whole,
Right.
Profit takes into account cash flow. Mortgage payments come into that whole profit thing. We don't care about mortgage payments at this point, right? So it's how quickly my investment returns. If I had to invest $100,000 to get back this amount of money, what percentage of my $100,000 investment is coming back to me every year? That's what a capitalization rate. How fast am I recapturing my investment? Does everybody follow that? If you have a 10% capitalization rate, how long is it going to take you to get your investment back? 10 years. 10 times 10 is 100, right? To get 100% of my investment back, it would take me 10 years at 10% a year. So a 10% cap rate means it's going to take me 10 years to get my investment back. That's the way you think of cap rates. Okay? That's the way investors think of everything. How fast am I getting back? What's that return on investment? So we did one of those math problems. Go back and look at those again. Make sure you know how to calculate net operating income. That's the big key there. Because if you can't get to that net operating income, and remember net operating income is annual, not monthly. So I don't think they like to do a lot. But the last bit here of the income capitalization approach, and Dustin asked me this question the other day. He said, well, what if it's residential, but that's not what they really do with it? What if they do what with it?
Rent it out.
If they rent it out. If I have a residential property, a house, a duplex, a triplex, a quadruplex, I can't go any past that. Number one, I don't know what the word for it is. Number two, there's no need for me to know what the word for it is, because if I go past 4 units, is it residential anymore? It's commercial at that point in time, okay? But if I have a residential property, 1 through 4 units, that was somewhere in that fair housing chapter, something about that residential property was defined as up to 4 units. Seems like I remember that. But if I have a residential property up to 4 units, and my purpose of owning it is not to live in it, but to make an income from it, then we treat it as an income producing property. We don't value it using the sales comparison approach anymore, because that's not its purpose. That's not its function. Is everybody okay on that? But we also don't use the full-blown version of the income capitalization approach with a cap rate and all that kind of stuff. That's just too fancy for that kind of property. So we use something called a gross rent multiplier. A gross rent multiplier. And so if you look in your book, it's on page 149, I believe. Yeah, 409. Gross rent multipliers are really, really simple if you don't overcomplicate them. Really simple. The gross rent multiplier, or GRM, equals the purchase price divided by monthly rent.
There's another income capitalization approach.
This is under income capitalization because it's an income method of coming up with a value. the gross rent multiplier is equal to purchase price or value, same thing, right? Same value. Divided by monthly rent. That's the first formula I've given you that looks like that. How do I normally give you a formula that looks like that? That's a T-bar, right? I want you to understand you can put things into T-bars yourself. Anytime you get something equals something over something else, or something equals something times something else, you can put it into a T-bar, right? What's on top there?
Purchase price.
Purchase price, right? Value.
Oh, right now, you mean, but not in the T-bar?
What's on the bottom?
Right.
How many spots I got left? That's how simple it is to make something into a T-bar.
How those two doesn't make a difference if it's.
It doesn't make, the ones at the bottom, doesn't make a difference which side they're on.
That's right.
That's how simple it is to make something into a T-bar. Got one on top, put it on top. On the bottom, put it somewhere on the bottom. The one you got left over, stick it in the hole you got left. Really, it's that simple. So now, no matter which one they give you, you know how to calculate whatever you need, right? So let's talk about what a gross rent multiplier actually is. It's nothing in the world but how many months it takes you to get your investment back. And so remember, a cap rate was some percentage of return on investment. So you can figure out how many years it might take you to get your money back. The gross rent multiplier is how many months at the current rent it takes me to get my investment back. If I have a gross rent multiplier of 120, that means at the current rent, it would take me 120 months to get my investment back on this property, which is 10 years, right? Which would be a 10% cap rate. 10% cap rate and a gross rent multiplier of 120 are the exact same thing. If you want to look at it that way. Does everybody kind of follow that? So with gross rent multipliers, we're using monthly rent, not net operating income and cap rates, it's monthly rent. So let me tell you how an investor looks at it. I have an investor who's told me he'll buy any residential property with a gross rent multiplier of 100 or lower. You want gross rent multiplier to be lower or higher? Lower, because we'd like to get our investment back faster, right? It's just the number of months it's going to take us to get our investment back. We'd like it to come back quicker. Whereas we want a cap rate to be higher, we want a gross rent multiplier to be lower. So an investor says he wants a gross rent multiplier of 100 or less. And I bring him a property that rents for $800 a month. Write down for me how much he's willing to pay for that property.
Say again.
Gross rent multiplier of 100 or less. That's the only way he'll buy it. And I bring him a property that rents for $800 a month. $80,000, right? Just plug it right into the T-bar. 800 times 100. So that investor would be willing to pay $80,000 for that property. Everybody follow that? Or less. Because they said a gross rent multiplier of $80,000 or less. So if I bring him a property that's listed at $75,000 that rents for $800 a month, is he gonna want to buy it?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. See how it works? Very simple. Very simple. Same way you could calculate the value or purchase price. You know, you can calculate the gross rent multiplier itself. If I told you, if somebody sold a property for $150,000 that rents for $1,200 a month, what's the gross rent multiplier? $150,000 sales price, $1,200 a month. 125? 25. Everybody with me? Easy, right? That's an easy one. All right, good. Good. On page 410, the last thing that you've got in that chapter 17 talks about reconciliation. That is the process that appraisers go through that you don't. That's what allows them to go from that range of value down to an exact number. Okay? It is not simple averaging. They don't just average the values together. They do. It's like weighted averaging, basically. They put more weight on certain comps than they do on others. So that's the process of reconciliation. That's it. Chapter 17. All right. So let's take a 10-minute break, and then we will. Did somebody have a question?
No, it's